think we're live. All right, welcome everybody to episode 49 of ACAB Radio. We're your hosts, Jay Lyfer, Kelly Special K Patterson, and this is our first show in a couple weeks, so we got a lot of news to cover. This police can't seem to stay out of the headlines lately. We'll try to do it as quick and painlessly as possible. But first, before we get into that, I'd encourage you guys to check out some interviews we did Sunday when we were at Anarcho Vegas. And I guess we could do like a quick little debrief about Anarcho Vegas. What did you think about it, Kelly?
I think it was good, and it's nice to get a bunch of people together that are like-minded people. For some reason, we don't have that a lot in Vegas, even though like every time like that idea is brought up, Vegas is always put together as like the place to go for obvious reasons, because everybody wants to come to Vegas and party, but for whatever reason that never happens. I know there was a push for a minute to have like a cop block convention kind of thing, but that never actually happened. But that's always been like something people put out there, is like coming to Vegas, and for some reason it never really happens. But it'd be nice, because then we don't have to go across the country.
Right. So. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I had been wanting to go to Anarchapulco for a couple years now, but it's just, you got to get a passport, you got to get the time off, and it's just more expensive. So the fact that it was in our hometown made it possible for us, people like us, to attend. I mean, the press passes helped too, because I don't know if I would have been able to afford. I mean, with the discount, it was like $108. I know that's outside of a lot of people's budget. But I do understand, in talking with the people who put it together, there are costs. That venue, it was a nice venue. I'm sure that cost a pretty penny. They weren't paying the speakers to come out, like paying the speakers to speak, but it was my understanding that they paid for their expenses to come out here, whether it be gas or plane tickets or lodging, that type of stuff. It was my understanding. So that kind of shit costs money, you know what I mean? So I understand you have to at least make that money back. People see that cost and think, oh, they're just trying to, get rich off of this deal, but they're definitely not making money, and if anything, they're lucky to break even.
Yeah, but just remember, if you come to Vegas with your event, then you're going to hit a jackpot and you'll make all that money back. So,
right. Also, if you couldn't be there in person, they had like the $15 live stream option, which I thought was cool. At least, you could still hear the speakers that way. Larkin Rose, I thought that was my favorite speech. We missed a lot of the speakers just because we were interviewing people the whole time, but I caught some of Avens O'Brien's. She was really good. She was, from the left, a lot of people, clown ACABs pretty much, because they think that there's this invisible hand that is the market that's going to solve everything. And she was on stage in front of a bunch of ACABs and libertarians and saying, don't wait for the free market to solve homelessness, right? Get out there, be proactive, and do something. So I thought that was really cool. Justin King, Bo of the Fifth Column, he gave a good speech. I caught some of that about creating anarchist networks. Yeah, I mean, when I told people that I was, excited about this event, I caught a lot of shit, because most of the people we hang out with, in town would be perceived as being on the left. So they're like, why are you hanging out with, what is it?
I think that I don't believe in capitalism, but I think there's a certain issue with the terminology used, because I think capitalism, as we know it, requires the government to prop it up. The same way that people criticize socialism because they think it's the government distributing food and everything. The reality of socialism is it's people getting together and collectively using their resources and sharing it how they decide to as a group.
Right.
Once you eliminate the government, then you don't obviously have the government sharing that for you because the government doesn't exist. And it's the same kind of thing. And I've always felt like that's the biggest criticism of ANCAPs, especially for me, is they have this idea that if you eliminate the government, then this magical marketplace is just going to solve every problem, and it won't. The thing about it is the government prevents workers from creating their own businesses and or working together to counter these giant corporations, which wouldn't exist without the government, because that's a government construct is a corporation. But I feel like really you get rid of the government and then you can solve the economics afterwards. And I think without government, the economic systems that we know of today would not be able to exist.
Right.
Because a lot of them require being propped up by a government. So I think that's one of those things,
Yeah, that's the way I feel too, is like whether you're ANCAP or ANCOM, like the beginning of it is AN, right? You're an anarchist first, and that's what people forget in all this infighting and debating. I think discussion is good, that's how you're going to work out these details, but don't get caught up on that yet. So much so that you're not willing to work with somebody just because their economic beliefs are different than yours. Like you said, we need to come together and focus on taking down the government first, right?
Yeah, and like I said, you have to get into it a little heavier than we can do within a minute or two here. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of terminology issues with it. I don't think that. Well, part of the problem is people think the only market available is capitalism. They at this point they equate a market to capitalism, and that's not a fact. There's markets before capitalism. Capitalism is relatively new. I don't think it's a free market. As we know, capitalism is not in any way a free market. It's controlled by the government. It's controlled by corporations through the government. And by the same token, people think communism or Marxism, which is within theory, the theory of Marxism is that the government takes over the corporation, or takes over the economy, takes over the government, which wouldn't exist in anarchism, obviously. Mm-hmm. But the idea that the only socialist structure is Marxism is false also. Socialist structures existed before Marx was ever born. So like I said, I think that you would have to work out the economics once you eliminate the government.
Right. And that's why I like to identify as a voluntarist, because so long as it's voluntary, I don't care what, another community is doing or how they're set up, as long as what they're doing is voluntary, right? So you could ideally have a voluntary ANCAP society and a voluntary ANCOM society living side by side. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
And once again, you look at what works for workers and what works for people, and
the community.
Working your ass off to make money for one guy just isn't a logical thing. Most people aren't going to agree to that. So,
Yeah, even hardcore Republicans that I talk to, I'll throw out well, if there was a factory run by all the workers, or if you worked in a factory, don't you feel like you worked there your whole life, that you contribute more than some CEO sitting back on his ass that inherited the company from his daddy and literally does nothing, doesn't even come into his office or anything, he just sits back and collects profit? Don't you think it makes more sense for the workers to control and control that factory? And they agree with that, you know what I mean? It just makes more sense. But then at the same time, they hate communism, and it's like, well, that is communism.
Well, I mean, you look at Paris Hilton. That's a perfect example. Like, the only contribution she has to any corporation is the money that her her father or her grandfather, her family made before she was ever born. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have any kind of input into it. She doesn't have any kind of, and that whole thing where like if all the rich people just disappeared, like we could do pretty well without Paris Hilton. I guarantee that. So,
Yeah, so I thought it was a great event because they didn't focus, like their primary focus, it wasn't capitalism. Like I feel like people on the left shouldn't be deterred from coming to such an event just because, you think everybody's a crypto fascist or whatever. You don't want to, like, I'm not into, I own no crypto, you know what I mean? I didn't stick around for the crypto panel, but there was an independent media panel, which was awesome. And there was just great speakers, and you get to talking to people as you're standing around, and I had some great conversations, met some local people that want to get involved now. So, I mean, meet local people, maybe you can convert them, you can, explain your ideas and get them to see things in a new light. Like, it's all important information, and people, especially on the left out here in Vegas, need to look at it in a different way. Like, you have more in common with an ANCAP than you do a Democrat, and you organize with Democrats out here all the time for protests, because they're, at least an ANCAP isn't a statist, right? They're not out there trying to get you to vote and do this and that for this candidate, you know what I mean? So, well, there are.
Most of the ANCAPs that were closet fascists are now out of the closet now that Trump's in office. So,
that's true.
That's one of the unintended consequences of Trump being elected. One of the unintended good consequences of it.
Right.
But and as far as crypto, there's a different perspective on it than a lot of people thought. Oh, crypto is going to take over the monetary system, and we're going to replace dollars as the world's. And the reality is that crypto isn't able to do that in the first place because you could just print dollars forever. So the limitations on crypto are what keeps it from taking over the monetary system. But the ability to have peer-to-peer trading and have untraceable trading is from an anarchist perspective, is the benefits of crypto.
Right. I'm all for that. That's cool.
It's, in a lot of ways, it's sort of like a kind of an underground society where you can trade amongst each other and not have the government tracking it.
Right.
So the freedoms of that is what's good with crypto. And also the system that crypto runs off of is adaptable to a million other things beyond just monetary systems. So that's why crypto's good if you're an anarchist to look into.
Right. Definitely. And after speaking with the people who put together the event, they said they'd be willing to help me. They do like meetups to talk about crypto and stuff like that. Like, I'm interested, like I'm all for not supporting the Fed and fractional reserve banking and fiat currency and whatnot. But what I don't get is when you buy crypto, you're still using fiat currency to buy the crypto.
Yeah. I mean, but, like I said, that's, like I said, blockchain, which is the system that runs crypto and it enables it to be used and confirmed when two people buy something that, that's adaptable to other things beyond the monetary system. So it's good for that. And the other thing is, even if you buy, $20 worth of crypto and then you send it to someone, you can do that without the government tracking it. So if you want to, buy a pair of shoes from somebody but you don't want to get into the whole, monetary system and all the different nonsense that goes with that, you can do that. Even if once those shoes are sold, the person who sold them to you turns around and sells the crypto. I mean, I used to do that with Nevada Cop Block. I made it available so people could buy merchandise off of the site. I mean, you actually still can do that, but with people crypto? Aren't really using crypto as much as they used to. Right. So it doesn't happen as much. But so basically I would let people buy stuff, but then at that time I wasn't too aware of crypto, so I wasn't really holding on to it. So I would just sell it as soon as somebody bought it.
Right.
And I actually ended up, like, when crypto ran up to like 20,000 about it. I think it was about a year and a half ago. I had like $12 worth of crypto that I got at the time when Bitcoin was worth like $128.
Right, so that shot up. And
I ended up having like $500 worth of
nice.
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Just from not cashing that in at the time.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, and I thought it was a very successful event. I liked the way they put it on. Like, they were super chill. One thing I wasn't happy about is at the event beers were $6. So yeah. we ran to the gas station and picked up some beers, and then when we walked in with the beers in our pockets, like the security's like, "Oh, you got those here, right?" We're just like, yeah, let us right in. So like it was just super chill. People smoking weed.
Yeah, they weren't so cool on smoking pot in the front of the front door, though.
Yeah, we were like literally right outside the front door, though. He's like, could you just maybe not right here? Like we were like right in front of the sign that says like
not
no
right in
smoking.
Front of the sign,
no smoking
the
weed out
Ghostbuster
here.
symbol on it.
Anarchists don't do good with signs and being told what to do, But yeah, it was cool. Definitely did some networking. Met a lot of, just real people doing good things, like spreading important messages, and putting in work in the independent media and just countering the state's propaganda. It was really cool. I'm looking forward to it next year. Definitely gonna go. Like I said, Larkin Rose's speech, if that's available, if I find it online somewhere, I'll share it, because I thought it was great. He had just as much to say about the left as he did about the right, and just talking kind of like about how he does with Candles in the Dark, like how to talk to statists and get your point across and get them to admit what it is that they actually endorse, when they say the things that they say. Like the real ugly truth underneath it all is that you're endorsing the state's violence on people, so getting them to admit that, whether it's like, well, if somebody doesn't pay taxes, what, if I don't want to pay taxes to pay for the Medicare for all or whatever it is program that sounds great. Like, I think everybody should get healthcare. Cool, that sounds great, but let's analyze and get down to the nitty gritty. What does that look like? You know what I mean? The government's not paying for it because the government doesn't have anything. Everything the government has, it takes from other people. So it comes down to individuals are funding it. And if somebody doesn't want to fund it, what's going to happen? Well, police with guns are going to come and kidnap and cage you because you didn't pay for taxes, right? So, I don't know. It was good points.
And the cost of all that caging drives up the price of the medical services. So
right.
Which is a reality. If you look into the medical system, all the government regulations, which are by and large created by corporations to prevent people from getting involved, that drives up the prices of medical care, which makes it hard for people to get. So the reality is it would be great, and it should be a reality, that everybody has access to affordable health care.
Right.
But the government itself is what prevents that. If we eliminated the government, then by and large people would have that.
Yeah, like I'd be all for it if it was something, doctors could volunteer themselves, like how Cuba sends doctors to other countries that work for free and provide services to people who can't afford it. Like, there should be communities, like there's volunteer firefighters, there could be volunteer doctors where you can go into clinics. I just saw a piece, I think it was Unicorn Riot did, on a collective in Greece. I mean, it exists. People out there are doing it, and as long as it's all voluntary, I'm all for it. But when you're trying to make somebody pay for something who doesn't want to pay for it, then you're advocating stealing from that individual. I can't get down with that. You know what I mean? Like, why should somebody who has no kids and doesn't plan on having kids have to pay for the cost of your wife to have a kid and pay for your kid to go to school and that sort of thing.
There's also a lot of side issues like waste that the government uses and corruption that the government, steals that money themselves, literally, And the other thing about that is that it creates a negative connotation. If you're collecting taxes from everybody, then everybody resents having to pay that without knowing where it's going.
Exactly.
But if your neighbor or your friend or your community, somebody within your community needed something, the natural human reaction is that you would help them.
Yeah, look at how successful these GoFundMes are for people. People are voluntarily helping people out.
Yeah, so if it was community-based services,
right,
and people were basically voluntarily allowing, or creating those systems, people would not resent having to do that. They would want to help out their neighbor. They would want to help out their family. They would want to help out their friends, their coworkers.
Nobody looks forward to tax day here in the U.S., right? To paying the taxes, especially when over half of every dollar is going towards military and bombing brown people all over the world. At least 7 different countries. So, I mean, if it was a more voluntary system where you could choose where your tax dollars are going, for example, something easy change like that, well, I would feel better if I could choose, okay, I want my money to go towards schools this year because, my son's going to start school or whatever. That type of thing. I think it'd just work a lot better. But overall, Anarcho Vegas, I thought was a great event. I thought they did a great job putting it together. Got some great speakers out there. A lot of important people from the independent media. And looking forward to see what they can do next year. I was surprised that there was one Proud Boy that showed up there. I thought he was wearing a Bitcoin shirt, and it's sad that those two shirts look so similar. But so I went and asked him. I'm like, "Are you a Proud Boy?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Why? Why are you a Proud Boy? Why would you want to?" And just again, conversation. It's important. He had some bullshit response that basically, a bunch of veterans that I know, we like to get drunk and hang out, and that was totally sidestepped the answer. But I don't understand why a Proud Boy would even come to an event like this, and I didn't see him talk to anybody because he's a statist. I mean, Proud Boys are mostly Trumpers. They worship authority, they support the troops, they back the blue, they fucking, there was just a flag burning in DC, which the reporter who filmed it was on the independent media panel, Ford Fisher, and the cop, after arresting the people who set the flag on fire instead of the people who assaulted the people setting the flag on fire, fist bumped the Proud Boys. So They love police. They carry their, thin blue line flag at their protests. They worship authority. So I thought it was very strange that he was there. And I had to ask him, why? What would make you want to be a Proud Boy? It doesn't make sense to me. And he didn't really give me an answer of value, but I didn't really expect one. But I just want to plant that seed, why, So he walked away from that conversation why am I fucking doing this? Hopefully, I don't know. But yeah, not a good look for Anarcho Vegas that there's a fucking Proud Boy there, just saying. Other than that, though, thought it was a great event. Great speakers. Benny Wills was the, I don't know what you would call it, hosted it. He's fucking funny. Had some good jokes. Yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say about that. I guess we could get into some of these news stories. So like I said, 2 weeks worth of shit. Got a lot to cover here.
Got a lot to cover from the last 3 days.
Right.
You're in Vegas even.
Yeah, just locally. Fucking A. So this is a New York cop that hemmed this dude up. As you can see in the thumbnail, he's got his knee on this guy's head, and he pulled out his gun and is just waving it around at all the people around, get the fuck back, and it was all over some bullshit. But head on over to news maven Ben Keller, who writes for Photography is Not a Crime. You can check that out. The video's up there and everything. this? Which one was this? Oh, yeah, they shoot this dude. He's already down on the ground. Look, there he goes, cop getting his gun. Boom, shot him.
I'm sure he thought it was his taser.
Yeah, just fucking fucked up, man. This is why we need to end the drug war. If you watch this video, this was clear case of police brutality. The guy's in cuffs on the ground, and the dude just didn't like what he was saying, so he just grabs his hair, slams his knee into the back of his head, and just his face just slams into the ground and busts him all up. He's bleeding and shit, all over some mushrooms. Like, it's just unbelievable. This was in Silver Springs, Maryland. But because somebody filmed this, that's why, we try to hammer home the importance of filming police. Because somebody filmed this, the officer, Kevin Morris, with the Montgomery County Police Department, he was brought on charges, 2 charges, one of second-degree assault and one misconduct in office. We'll follow it up and see what kind of sweetheart deal he gets, because we know that's, usually what happens.
It's just, gonna happen.
Yeah. But I do want to, this is a good opportunity, this article, to bring up Oakland and Colorado, where they've decriminalized psilocybin mushrooms. So there are some places that are, taking steps, heading in the right direction to end the drug war. So yeah, support those kind of measures. If you're gonna vote for shit like that. You know what I mean? And again, always film the police. The next article was just tragic. Another one from the Free Thought Project. Cops find innocent homeless man sleeping in his car and shoot him in the head. So the cop fired one shot. It was a headshot. We'll follow it up and see what kind of sweetheart deal he gets, taking steps heading in the right direction. It was Coweta County Deputy John Collins. Woke the guy up. The guy freaks out, starts the car. They box him in. So the car was pinned. And then this cop is saying, oh, well, I thought he, was going to run over one of my brothers in blue. So he fired into the window, one shot, headshot. Just unbelievable how... That's why when you got to realize there is no crime too small. No law too small that cops won't kill you over. So before you decide that it's a good idea to bring in this politician that wants to create more laws, some stupid fucking law like, oh, you can't sleep in your vehicle, let's make that illegal because there's too many people sleeping in their vehicles nowadays. Well, this is what happens. People get shot over it. Last I checked, he was in critical condition in the hospital. I don't know if he died or not.
When you look into those laws, there's the sales pitch that they use to pass them, but the reality of it is most of those laws, by and large, even really innocuous laws, at the very least, they're designed to allow the police to have an excuse to interact with you.
Right.
So that they can figure out whether they have some other reason to fuck with you.
Yeah. Most definitely. So you can head over to the Free Thought Project. They've always done great work. Some of the best in the game. So check out that article if you want. We can't do an episode this week without talking about this fucking douchebag. Right here. Hold on. Uh-oh.
He's the latest cop to be rewarded for murdering somebody.
Right. So Officer Phillips Brailsford, that's the guy who shot Daniel Schaefer. I'm sure most of our viewers have already heard about this and know this case very well, but this was the guy who decided to play a game of fucking Simon Says and make the poor dude crawl on his knees towards him and gave him conflicting orders and essentially created a situation where he could get away with murder and shot the guy with his own fucking gun that he brought from home that said he had like "you're fucked" written on it or something like that.
Yeah,
just a real life piece of shit. And he killed the guy, Daniel Shaver, and then he ended up getting fired because the police department, you know, there was such a backlash that the police department was like, okay, we gotta, you know, separate from this guy. So they acknowledged that what he did was wrong, and that you know, he violated several of their standard operating procedures or whatever. So they fired him. But, you know, years later, after he, you know, was dismissed in a criminal court, the charges brought against him, they tried to quietly bring him back onto the force just long enough to where he could get his pension and his
they didn't
medical
try, they
disability. Yeah, they did. But they tried to do it quietly, is what I'm saying. So, but it's come out now. Right. People don't forget who this fucking guy is.
Well, what they did is they rehired him long enough for him to put in for disability.
Which he claims, I have PTSD because I killed this guy.
His disability is based on him having PTSD from murdering somebody.
Yeah.
And from having to go on trial for that.
Yeah, like my thing is the disability is for like if you get injured on the job, not if you're breaking the rules, you know what I mean?
Well, the first thing is if you're a civilian and you tried to put into Social Security for, you know, disability because you murdered somebody. I mean,
yeah,
you might possibly get that if you're a soldier and you did it in combat and you killed somebody.
Yeah,
but if you were out on the street and you decided to kill somebody and then they put you on trial for it, go ahead and put in for Social Security disability for that. And the second thing is government disability is different than Social Security disability. Social Security disability, you're not allowed to work anymore. So government disability just means you're not allowed to be a cop anymore. You're not allowed to work in the field that you worked. So you're not allowed to, you know, work as a cop or whatever government business that you worked. Mm-hmm. So the reality is he's getting $31,000 a year. And that's on top of whatever job he's going to get. And he's probably going to get some kind of, you know, he'll get some, either a connection that he made during the police while working for the police, or some cop lover that works in some kind of security job.
Right.
So he's probably going to be out there as some kind of security consultant or, you know, something of that nature.
On top of,
collecting. So he'll get $31,000 plus whatever that salary is.
Yeah, stolen taxpayer dollars. And he should have just been fired. I mean, he should have been jailed, you know, imprisoned for murder. But he got off with that. At the very least, keep him fired and don't give him a fucking check. You know, they're cutting him a check.
Well, and the one little, you know, straw that people try to hang on to when they're cop lovers or cops, because usually it's the cops or some sort of relative or buddy of theirs,
right,
is, you know, this idea that he was reported to have had a weapon and that's why they came out, and then he supposedly reached for his waistband. So the thing about it is, first of all, he was reported to have had a rifle, and he didn't have a rifle in his gym shorts that he was wearing in the hallway. Right. And on top of that, in Arizona, they have constitutional carry.
Yeah, you could legally have a rifle.
You could have a concealed weapon without even a permit, which is rare in the United States.
Right.
So the thing is, he's allowed to have a weapon.
Illegal, yeah, in the first fucking
So they had no reason, you know, and when they came, they knew he didn't have that rifle at the time because he's wearing, like I say, he's wearing a pair of gym shorts.
But they still come at him like they're trying to clear a house in Afghanistan of the Taliban.
And even if you want to put on those blinders and pretend that maybe he had another weapon, he had 6 people pointing a gun at him.
Right.
Aiming at him at the time. By the time he reached over, pulled a gun out, pointed it at them, and fired, they could have shot him 20 times.
Yeah, but they don't want to de-escalate. They were, you know, yelling fucked up shit and contradictory things.
Yeah, so there's no justification whatsoever for what happened.
Absolutely not. And what about the family? I mean, if anything, his family is the one with PTSD over all of this.
Well, and that's the thing, you know, I was working as the editor of Cop Block at the time, and we got a message from his wife. Or actually, it wasn't a message directly to us. It was a message that was posted on Facebook that somebody forwarded to us. I thought it was fake at the time because it was such an outrageous story that I was like, this can't be real. You know, and so we didn't publish the story until like a couple days after the shooting because, like I said, I just didn't believe that it could be a real story. And I thought it was like a hoax that somebody put up. And in fact, it actually had one of those GoFundMe accounts on there, because she needed money to bury him. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a scam to collect money. honestly, is what I thought, because it was just such a ridiculous story.
Yeah, and then it blew up, and it's like, wow, I can't believe this is real.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. So.
And this isn't an isolated incident. Just like the other things, there's, not only is this something that happens all the time, there's a Vegas connection, of course. Jesus Aravello, who murdered Stanley Gibson, was allowed to stay on the police force and to apply for disability, and he's getting like 28,000. They say it's between 23 and 28,000. They've never said the actual detailed amount because that's confidential. But he's getting disability. He gets payments every month to sit on his ass at home, or I'm sure he has another job by now, so he gets that on top of whatever job he's working.
Yeah.
And his claim was the same thing. He has mental anguish caused by having murdered Stanley Gibson and having been accused, having people criticize him for murdering Stanley.
You wonder why there's so many officer-involved shootings. Well, there's so many rewards, like incentives to shoot someone. You get a paid vacation, you get all this time off while sitting back collecting a check, and then after everything blows over and dies down, you'll probably get your job back. And if you don't, you're at the very least going to collect a nice check for the rest of your life. But you might collect the check for the rest of your life and start working for another department, or start working, another job on top of it, as this guy is.
And murdering somebody is an extreme case, but if you arrest somebody and you're a police officer, unlike other jobs, you get to do the arrest report on your off time. After you get done from your shift, that's when you go in and you file your report. So you get paid overtime for arresting somebody. So the incentive to go out and arrest people for nonsense is monetary,
right?
And you get paid for that. So there's all kinds of incentives for the police to mistreat people, to falsely arrest people, to harass people. And also, you get paid overtime to go to court to testify. So, if you're in the mindset of wanting to get paid overtime for whatever, and you're a police officer, there are ways to do that, and there's incentives.
Christmas is coming up. We got to buy a lot of gifts. I need some OT to pay for that. Might just shoot somebody. Well, then I'll be able to be home for the holidays, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
If you're Jesus Aravello, you get to stay home for 2.5 years getting paid.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to the next story. Spent enough time talking about this fucker. Police body cam shows Atlanta officer stealing from murder victim. Yeah. This was Atlanta PD officer Keisha Richburg stole $500 from a dead man's wallet. So just thought we'd share that with you.
Yeah, so she's investigating somebody who was murdered and took their possessions, and one of those possessions was a wallet full of money, and somehow that money disappeared between her picking it up and dropping it off at the hospital for her family, or for his family.
All right. This was a good read as well. Head over to Nevada Cop Block's Facebook page. We've got this article up there about cop gangs, particularly the Banditos, but there are also other cop gangs that they're looking into, like the Spartans, the Regulators, and the Reapers. People, average cop apologists don't even know that this is a thing. Everyday citizens don't know this is a thing, but cops are forming gangs within their departments, and some that are statewide or citywide, multiple departments. But they get, tattoos just like gang members do, and the feds are looking into it because they're wondering, as these cases start coming up, like, what are some of the requirements to join the gang? Do you have to plant a gun on someone? Do you have to, use civil asset forfeiture to steal money? Do you have to, a lot of them are racist groups, so do you have to kill, somebody to get into it? It's just, it was a good read. It's fucking crazy that this is actually a thing, but...
Well, and they're bold enough that they're going out to put tattoos on themselves to, that they're not concerned about being caught. And that tells you a lot about the mindset and environment that the police are working in.
Yeah.
And they're also, they basically have turf wars. There's cops fighting other cops because they don't belong in the same, they're not in the same gang. So it's, there's an old saying that the police are the biggest gang in the country, and it's really actually true. But when you look into it, the way the police act, but this is literally their gang members, and they're acting the way the street gangs act.
Yeah. Absolutely. Next story here. Body camera bill will keep police videos private. So you take one step in the right direction, you get them wearing body cameras, and then you've got politicians trying to cover their asses. Partially because of the lobby from, police unions and whatnot, but they're trying to... This was in Boston, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things when they come out with the body cams, one of the things they always float out there is that we don't need to film them anymore because now they've got their own cameras. But guess who has access to that and who is in control of it, and who can edit it after it's been put out there.
Yeah, or just
make it disappear.
Yeah, exactly. If it's something that's gonna make you look bad, oh well, he forgot to turn it on. Yeah. This was something I came across on Instagram. I tried to find out what country it was, and I was not successful. But it's basically a protest where a cop runs over protesters with the motorcycle, and then like instant karma. I don't see any yellow vests, so I don't know.
Why?
Yeah, so that was a hell of a shot.
So it's hard to tell because the audio is not very good, but it sounded kind of Asian, the language they were speaking.
Yeah, it could have been Hong Kong. I don't know.
Might be. There's a lot going on in Hong Kong right now.
Yeah, I got another article to show about Hong Kong. It's just, Puerto Rico. Shit's hitting the fan all over the place, so it's really hard to tell where that's happening at. But yeah, another case of instant karma. Cop runs over somebody, and then people weren't having it. One hell of a throw, and got his ass. But the next story here is again out of New York. Following a traffic stop, they beat this dude bloody for failing to signal. And, after beating his ass, kidnapping him, and caging him, the charges were dropped against him. So, then you've got this story out of Detroit. They actually handcuffed their black police commissioner for asking questions at a public hearing. So that was crazy.
Yeah, so that's the thing is, the cops aren't safe from each other. If you oppose them, they're coming after you. The guy's the police commissioner, and they're fucking dragging him out because he's criticizing the accountability of the police. Yeah,
so if you're,
especially if you're, a dark complexion.
Right.
Which usually happens, they usually, this is usually to appease people. They'll put people of color in a position such as police commissioner
for PR
when the department has, some sort of really high profile case,
right?
Which, obviously is in Detroit, so there's no shortage of that.
Exactly. So, but he got in there and actually started,
they're usually a figurehead. They're usually not somebody who's going to go ahead and oppose actual corruption, but in this case the guy was, and we see what happens.
Yeah, they're supposed to blindly follow the dictates of politicians and not question the politicians. So this is what happens when you do. He got carried out of the public hearing, the police commissioner. Then you've got this New Jersey cop overdoses in police car while on duty. So I don't know if he died, but this was just a crazy story. You've got to head over to the Free Thought Project and read this. Child rape victim goes to police for help and is tied up and raped by her detective. So I clicked it. I'm like, this they've got to be like, changing words to make it a more, appealing headline to get clicks or whatever. I don't know. This can't be true, right? So I head over there and read it, and it's just like, wow, this is exactly what happened. What was the guy's name? I thought I wrote it on here. Yeah, L.A. County Sheriff's Detective Neil David Kimball, 46, pled guilty to raping a 14-year-old. But there's just so much wrong with this case. So yeah, the poor girl, she was already a sexual assault survivor, went to the police for help. This guy, the detective, befriended her and the family, and later ended up taking her, tying her up and raping her. And he didn't get charged with the harsher charges that he should have, the more serious charges. Instead, he got charged with lewd act with a child and unlawful sexual intercourse. Like, he didn't get charged with rape or anything like that. So with these charges, he gets a maximum of 3 years. Max. That's crazy.
And that's a pretty typical behavior of a predator, is they seek out people who are vulnerable and have a history of being abused because they know that they're vulnerable.
Right. Yeah. And not only seek out these types of victims, but they're beginning to seek out this profession.
Well, and they do that. That's why you had the priest scandal. That's why you have teachers constantly being caught. And that's why you have coaches, Boy Scout, whatever the hell they call them, the Scout Master or whatever.
Yeah.
They seek those out because they put them in a position both to identify and to take advantage of
absolutely
people that are able to be victimized in that way.
Yeah. So not even a national, we're going global now. This was another cop charged with making indecent images of children. So he didn't have child porn on his computer. He was actually making child porn. This was in the UK. This guy here, this is another example of why we need to end the drug war. Cop smells weed, so they handcuff man and sodomize him. He wasn't pulled over because of weed. It was actually pulled over because of the window tint. So the window tint leads to the odor of marijuana. Then they pull him out of the car, and what was supposed to be just like a strip search type of deal, which allows them to, legally, they can pull down your pants and observe. They can look to see, like, did you stuff it down his pants? Is it under your nuts? Whatever. But a strip search is different from a body cavity search. And they actually did a body cavity search right there on the side of the road. Went all up in this dude's ass over some weed. Like, it's crazy. So, he's going to be getting a check. Taxpayer funded check.
And, yeah, it won't be the cops paying him either.
Yeah. Next story. This was big news. After waiting 5 long years, Trump's Attorney General William Barr, right before the statute of limitations, ended up deciding not to charge the officer for killing Eric Gardner in New York. You got to remember, these are the same cops. I mean, just this week we've had, 2 or 3 stories out of New York. I mean, every week we're covering something by the NYPD. They've got a known history of corruption and brutality, but it's not getting any better. It's only getting worse. And these are the same cops that after they killed Eric Gardner, they mocked him wearing shirts that say "I can breathe" in their own protest that they had, pro-police march that they had. They're wearing shirts. Officers are wearing shirts
when you're
that say,
talking
"I can
about
breathe."
These seemingly innocuous laws and that allow the police to have contact with people. Eric Garner was murdered because he sold cigarettes, loose cigarettes out of a pack. And So the justification for it was he didn't pay taxes on that. But meanwhile, he bought a pack of cigarettes, so he did pay taxes. So, it's just like, that's
government.
When they want to fuck with somebody, that's one of those things that gives them an excuse to fuck with them.
Yeah. Government wants their cut of everything. Cigarette gets sold, I want my cut. And so they pass a law to make sure that happens. You got to get a business license or whatever. And if you don't have that, cops will come and harass you or literally choke the life out of you. So that was depressing to, see once again a case of blatant murder where somebody literally gets choked to death and there is cell phone footage of it and the cops still get off.
Well, the guy who took that footage ended up in prison.
Right. Yeah, they actually retaliated against the person who filmed that, exactly. This is a local story here. Guam Homeland Security official sentenced for mailing meth from Vegas to his workplace. So he actually was sending meth from Vegas to Homeland Security headquarters in Guam. So that was pretty
Which obviously
crazy.
Is just like meth is way cheaper here than Guam's. So.
Oh, for sure. But he must be getting high on his own supply because they first caught on because he wrote the wrong address. So they mailed it to the wrong place, and somebody's like, "Yeah, I just got this meth." So they traced it back to him, and then he was shipping more shit out to the Department of Homeland Security headquarters in Guam.
Yeah. So they're hiring the brightest of the bright.
Yeah.
For the Homeland Security.
Pretty crazy.
And he actually, to be fair, he did write on the back of the envelope, "This is not meth." So,
Way to go, Ricky.
He did try to look out that way, but, he didn't fool him. They're fucking professionals.
This is a story that was shared on Nevada Cop Block's Facebook page if you want to check it out. But the mayor and police chief were finally forced to say something about this body cam footage of the Christopher Pate arrest. Again, New York, city of Rochester. It was a case of mistaken identity. They thought that he resembled somebody who was wanted in the area. So, yeah, the crime of being black, basically. He fit the description.
And by the way, they're not allowed to demand ID from you because they think you look like someone.
Right.
You have to actually be committing, or they have to have a suspicion that you're committing a crime in order to demand ID from you. They can't just say, "We think you look like someone."
Yeah. So at first he didn't want to give him his ID because he's like, "Well, what the fuck? I didn't do anything." Then the cop tried to make up something like jaywalking or something. And got his ID and then just ended up roughing him up, like threw him down, punching him, and literally broke the guy's face, like broke bones in his face.
And that was after they had established that he wasn't the guy they were looking for. He did actually give him his ID before that.
Yeah, exactly.
They were just mad that he didn't do it right away.
Yep. Contempt of cop was the real offense here. Trevor Noah, The Guardian, you can head over there and watch that. I'm not a fan of Trevor Noah, but this was good. Every now and then he tries to slip in some real shit. But yeah, I was just surprised that Phoenix Police Department has 44 police shootings last year. I thought we were bad with the 20-something that we had last year, but we're up in our numbers. I mean, Metro's...
They try.
They got more so far this year than they did last year.
They're doing what they can.
So we have a recent officer-involved shooting out here that we have something to say about. But the next story out of Salt Lake City, they released body cam footage of how officers handled a peaceful protest, an inland port protest. And, it was, basically them beating up protesters, peaceful protesters. So that's also available on Nevada.
Which they actually didn't
Facebook
release.
page.
They released video, but they didn't release the part where they were beating protesters, but they're being investigated for that.
Oh, so like just, okay, yeah. So they can say, we released body cam footage, but not the body cam footage that matters, right?
No, they're keeping that like in their office and they're watching it, during lunch.
This is another local story here. We talked about this on a past show, and we like to follow up to see what kind of sweetheart deals these cops get. This was a school cop, Clark County School District police sergeant, who was stealing laptops and electronics and stuff, and he got 30 days and probation.
So. He got 30 days, and he was selling the shit like on Craigslist and on eBay.
And 30 days, when you get sentenced to 30 days out here, like you do 20, you know. So he got less than 3 weeks and probation. This was fucked up. So now in Orange County, they're going to be arresting the homeless just for being in certain areas. So basically criminalizing the homeless once again. But just for the simple fact of being homeless, you can be arrested in certain areas of California now. This is an example of not all heroes wear capes. Warren police asking for help to find thieves who took doors from Humvee. So, all right, you want to militarize the police, do you? Well, nice. Good luck with no doors. This guy. Detroit. So jaywalking, again, a trivial offense, but he was arrested, taken to jail for 3 days, and he wasn't charged with anything. So it's like now they just fucking kidnap you and you don't even need charges. It's insane. This is that same guy. The Free Thought Project also wrote an article on it. The fucking New York cop on roid rage, just fucking pulling a gun on everybody in the area.
And he's doing that gangster style. You know?
Yeah. This was actually a lawyer who was standing up for the family in family court was arrested. They issued a warrant and she turned herself in. So you can head over to that Facebook page, parentalrights.org, and read that story. It's just crazy that they're even arresting lawyers now. Longtime LAPD officer arrested for raping 2 women. Hold on real quick. I think I wrote something about this. Maybe not. But there's just so many rapists this week. I can't remember what exactly was going on with this. So it was in California. I think one person came forward is what happened, and then after she came forward, they started looking into this guy and used his DNA, entered it into the database, and found out that he was the perpetrator in an older case. So
so if you ever wonder why they can't find money to test all his DNA kits. You know?
All the rape kits. Yeah. That's why, because they don't want half their officers to be arrested, right? Same thing out here. They arrested that one guy. And California, another officer, just recently. Patterson cop admits stealing cash from drivers during illegal traffic stops and using excessive force. So, Patterson, New Jersey. This was the third officer, Frank Toledo. So there were 2 previous ones, Jonathan Bustillo and Matthew Torres. And they had this, little crew going around, just pulling over anybody for anything. You really don't even have to do anything wrong. They were falsifying charges. Oftentimes not even charging people with anything, just stealing their money. Because if you can't prove how you got the money that you have on you, then they can take it, civil asset forfeiture.
I'm starting one of those online petitions to have the name of that place changed.
Which one? Patterson?
Right.
I'm not affiliated. I do not endorse
contrary to popular opinion, popular in my house. I did not found that none of my family members were involved in Patterson, New Jersey.
This was fucked up. Court rules police officer who shot 10-year-old is protected by qualified immunity. So the cop showed up, was actually trying to shoot the family dog, missed and shot the 10-year-old daughter, and the court said, "Oh, you get qualified immunity."
That's the one where there's video of it, right?
I believe so. I haven't watched it.
And it's like the dog isn't doing anything, which is the typical case with it. But
oh, and it's in the living room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw that one. Yep. Just rough to watch. Cops assault and arrest 2 Marines for giving first aid to an unconscious man. There was a settlement that the Marines were awarded, $116,000. Again, taxpayers foot the bill. I'm going to share all these links in the comments section of this live stream, so if you want to read any of these stories.
That's one of those things, the part of the training of the cops now is you have to be in control of the situation, and they've had, there's cases, if you look into it and you do a quick Google search, there's numerous cases where there was a man who he wanted to go back into the house because his daughter was there, I think, but there was a child in the house that the house was on fire, and the thing about that is you can make the argument that it's danger to him and they shouldn't let him go back in the house because he's going to die as well as the kid. But it was like a situation where they tasered him, And there's also there's other cases where there were children drowning and there was somebody there, and because they weren't a lifeguard or a cop or they weren't a government employee, they didn't let them go in and save the children, right. And the children died.
So all for safety, of course. Yeah, it's unbelievable. So this is the Free Thought Project. Also wrote about the same article we already talked about. This was the article I mentioned before when we were talking about Hong Kong. Hong Kong protesters brutally beat a police officer. So a lot of people were tweeting this video and trying to create outrage in favor of the police. Like, look at these people, they're out of control. Look at what they're doing to this officer. But then within those threads and online, you can find all kinds of video footage of police doing the very same thing, and nobody speaks up about it. Police just brutally beating women protesters. It's all bad in Hong Kong, and it's been going on for a while now, and these police are really fucking people up.
Yeah, and there's an old saying, they only call it class war when we fight back, and that's kind of right. It's a little bit, you got to change up the words a little bit, but that's kind of what it is. The cops have been doing that to people for how long?
Exactly, and just like the caption says here, eventually the people fight back. I'm not going to just allow police to beat the shit out of you when you're protesting and you're rightfully pissed off, right? Next, what do we got here? Houston Police Officers Union endorses Turner for re-election. Apparently this desire to undercut firemen is a pretty widespread thing with cops and not just limited to our longtime fan.
Right. Yeah.
If you're in the Houston area and you vote, I would encourage you to vote Derek Bros for mayor. I'm not sure what his stance is on firemen, so you'd have to hit him up for that. But I know his stance on no-knock raids. He wants to end no-knock raids because of the Tuttle incident out there where the police lied and said they had an informant, and that they ended up doing a no-knock raid on their house, killed them both, and the dog, I believe, as well. And it later came out that it was all bullshit. Kill the dog. They're like, oh, these are cop member. The police union president was like, these were cop haters, and it's all you cop haters that are talking down on our officers, which is why this happened. And then it later came out that no, these weren't black tar heroin dealers. You guys are the real fucking problem, not us that are exposing you guys for this type of shit. But yeah, you can read that article as well as this one. Chicago Tribune. 4 Chicago cops fired for alleged cover-up of fatal police shooting of Laquan McDonald. So 4 more bite the dust.
Well, meanwhile, they were only fired, and they'll probably get rehired somewhere else.
Oh, they will.
And
for sure.
I think there was 20-something involved in the cover-up that were exonerated completely, not even so much as fired. And one of the things is there's a video of them going to the Burger King that's in the area that had a video camera pointed at the shooting. and they're on the surveillance video, deleting previous video that shows that shooting. So they, it's not like, they just didn't say something, or they just, tailored their statement to support the officer. Some of them physically destroyed evidence.
Yeah. I just wish we could have got this level of I don't know. I hate to say justice, because I feel like Van Dyke should have got way more time, and all of these officers should have, they're co-conspirators in this cover-up.
They should have been charged with destroying
prison.
evidence. The ones that did that, they should have been charged with it as an accessory.
Yeah, so I don't want to say justice, but I feel like I wish that we could get at least that much out here, like with Eric Scott, where Metro destroyed the footage from Costco. It's the same thing. Mosier should have gotten at least 6 years like Van Dyke did, and all these other officers should have been fired for their involvement in the cover-up and destroying evidence. So we don't even have that level of accountability. And
when he fell on the ground and they emptied their guns, after he was already mortally wounded and not a threat at that time, because he was laying on the ground shot.
Right. So, I guess this is somewhat of a victory, what happened with these officers, but not nearly enough, but it's better than at least what we're getting out here in Vegas. We talked about this guy already. But this was, at first we only thought, when the story first broke, that it was just the disability he was getting, like a few thousand, but then it turned out that he's also getting his pension, so it's $31,000 a year. Houston police officer arrested and relieved of duty in prostitution ring. So not only do these officers, frequent sex workers often and often extort them. I'm going to arrest you if you don't do this type of deal. But they also like the out here,
food isn't the only thing against policy that they use their position to get for free.
They're not just copping a meal or copping a field or copping what. But even our vice squad out here that was in charge of like sex trafficking and prostitution and whatnot got caught working for other banks.
And that actually ties into another story, because I think it was 2 days ago, maybe 3, an off-duty cop on the Strip shot himself.
Right.
And they haven't released any sort of details exactly what happened. We don't know if he was doing that Wild West thing where you spin the gun around your finger.
or like the FBI agent doing backflips on the dance floor and the gun drop.
So we don't know the exact circumstances, but one of those cops that was caught in the Vice sting, I think his name is Pease. I can look it up,
but he's the one that accidentally discharged his AR.
Yeah, he shot
on New Year's.
He shot somebody else on New Year's.
Yeah, on accident.
Yeah.
And he was on the Vice squad that we were talking about.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of the names of all these Metro cops that are doing crazy shit, because there's so many of them.
So many of them shooting
so much crazy shit
on the Strip, and so many of them frequenting prostitutes, and so many of them working for other pimps. It's hard to keep them straight. Here we go. New Jersey officer charged with murder and death of 3-month-old daughter. Now, the worst thing, not the worst thing. The worst thing is that he killed the 3-month-old, but what makes matters worse is that after the fact, he opened a GoFundMe in which he raised, almost $18,000. So he actually profited off of murdering his 3-month-old daughter.
Which is against policy for GoFundMe, by the way. It's against the TOS.
Funding murder? I would hope so.
Yeah. Well, you can't. That's literally against their terms of service. You can't raise money for something involving a legal thing, and they've cut off regular people who've been charged for crimes who are trying to raise money to hire a lawyer or something.
Right.
But these cops, they don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like Officer LaPera.
Yeah, LaPera
killed Tashi Brown out here. The officer started a GoFundMe and raised tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah, and
Yeah. So when they say crime doesn't pay, it doesn't apply to the police, because crime actually does pay when they do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
whether it's the state paying them or GoFundMe.
In way more ways than one.
Right.
Numerous different ways.
I don't know if I'm going to play this because it's kind of long, but I'll share it in the comments section of this live stream after we end it. Or you could head over to America's Police Problem. This is Baytown Police Department in Texas. This guy, I mean, he fucked up because he gave him consent to search. But essentially, he asked the officer, like, am I free to go? And the cop's like, yeah, you can leave whenever you want, man. And then as soon as he says that, as soon as the officer says that, he's like, all right, put your hands behind your back. Because another officer found a pill bottle in the trunk which had this man's antibiotics in it. And they're like, oh, he's a drug dealer. So they beat the shit out of this guy, tase him and whatnot. And I think this was a tasing video, but they roughed this dude up. So check out the article, the video as well. But all over a legal prescription that he had, you know, which is why I want to emphasize to our viewers, never consent to a search. Don't tell them about your day. You know, you can be very polite and just say, no, officer, I'm not going to discuss my day. Well, where are you coming from? I'm not going to discuss my day. Well, you know, where are you going?
The proper answer to that, or the one I use anyway, is I don't see how that's relevant to your investigation.
There you go. Yep. And then, am I being detained? And if not, you're free to go. But this guy, they told him he's free to go, and then they still fucked him up.
The thing is, you know, you have the right to tell the cops to fuck off if you want, but at the same time, you don't actually have to get into a hostile confrontation with the police and give them a reason to abuse you.
Right.
In their mind, anyway, you know.
Here's a picture of the guy.
You can be polite about asserting your rights.
Yeah, I find that's even more productive because you give them enough room to hang themselves. They're going to make themselves look stupid by not showing them.
It actually does frustrate them because they want you. They know how to deal with angry people, and they know how to deal with people that are afraid of them. They don't know how to deal with somebody that is calm and aware of their rights.
Yeah.
So I've actually had a cop accuse me of being passive aggressive for not allowing him to search me.
Yeah. Don't consent to a search. You're just setting yourself up.
Yeah.
This is what happens. Look at this guy. Next story. Dude, you do not want to be a police officer in Alaska.
You don't want to be
You don't want to be a police officer.
You don't want to be a citizen in Alaska that's got those fucking cops running around with their... A lot of those cops were accused of sex crimes. And part of that article is that there's a huge issue with sex crimes in Alaska. And I wonder why when they're hiring cops that have a history of sex crimes.
All 42 of these tribal and city police officers have rap sheets. All of them. Every single officer hired. That's crazy. That would have prevented them from being hired in the first fucking place.
Yeah. And should have.
Yeah. So definitely check out that article. That's available on our Nevada Cop Block Facebook page, but I'll also be sharing it into the comment section. Courtroom chaos. I'm going to try to wrap this up because this episode's going pretty long here so far. This was a judge who was dragged away from her after her own sentencing.
Yeah.
This was the North Las Vegas, another local story. North Las Vegas assistant police chief was arrested on DUI charges. Of course, he's on a paid vacation right now. Unlike me, who if I was arrested for DUI right now, I'd lose my job. You know, my boss isn't going to pay me a vacation and then also conduct an investigation and let me off later.
Well, most people would be fired just the fact they got arrested and they missed work, but there are people that, you know, don't get fired. But I don't know of any job outside of a government job where they're going to give you time off and pay you on top of it while you're being investigated.
I got into it in the comment section with some guy who claimed that he got a DUI and the same thing happened to him and he's not a cop. I'm like, well, you're literally the first case I've ever heard of this happening too. But yeah, you shouldn't be trying to justify that this is the right course of action. I mean, you don't reward bad behavior. You know, that's why we got all these badass kids running around, because the kids cry or fucking act out, and you give them a lollipop to shut them up. And it's like, well, they're gonna keep fucking acting out if you keep giving them these fucking lollipops. So quit paying these fucking cops every time that they break the law. Maybe they'll stop breaking the law. I don't know. Just my theory, but
I don't know. It might be asking too much.
I know. Another family sues Chicago police for raiding the wrong home 3 times in 4 months and pointing guns at their kids. This is how often cops raid the wrong houses. Like, when I say this shit, people think, oh, well, you know, maybe a couple times a year they might accidentally get the address wrong or whatever. No. This family, their home was raided 3 times in 4 months. And
you think
they went to the wrong place.
Maybe after the second time they'd put it, you know,
they'd recognize the house or
don't
something.
go to this house anymore. You know?
Unbelievable, dude. Just unbelievable. Yeah. So they're suing.
And, you know, pointing guns at children, you know, I mean,
it's just unnecessary.
First of all, the children probably aren't involved in the drugs, if, you know, even if you want to, you know, use that as a justification, but you really need to point a gun at a kid. I mean, even if you know, you want to round them up and put them in the living room or whatever, you know, you probably don't need to put your fucking AR-15 on them.
No, these aren't fucking child soldiers in Africa, you know, running through the woods, the forest with fucking AKs. These are kids with stuffed animals and shit. So another local story, Metro shot somebody a couple days ago. This is OIS number 11, so they are ahead of schedule compared to last year. Again, when we bring up these officer-involved shootings, we're not, most of the time, not taking the side of the victim who was shot by the police. Because a lot of times these are dirtbags, you know what I mean, that should be arrested. But we do criticize the tactics involved. We don't believe that Metro should be judge, jury, and executioner, and there are better protocols for them to follow. Now,
well, and it's also, you know, when you look at the headline there, it's also the classic example of them using the words to frame their narrative, because
right, words are important.
Armed felon confronts the police, you know, and
yeah,
you know, I mean, if he was armed and all that, then cool. But I highly doubt that he tracked the police down and confronted them. You know, they confronted him. Whether they had a justifiable reason for confronting him might be a different question, but he didn't follow them around and pull them over and confront them.
Yeah, so my whole thing with this...
and they didn't know he was a felon at the time, you know.
No, they don't know any of this shit, but... Like I said, dude's a dirtbag. He stole a truck, right? Doesn't deserve to be shot over it. The weapon, when they say armed felon, supposedly, who knows, but supposedly he had a pellet gun on him, okay? That's their story.
Yeah, which is the go-to throwdown gun these days.
I mean, there's literally numerous departments where officers carry pellet guns and BB guns and whatnot to
but
throw
just ask
down.
yourself how often you hear a story of the police shooting somebody and it's a pellet gun that the person was armed with.
Exactly. Yeah. And we have to take, you know, everything Metro says with a grain of salt, because they lie to us all the time, and it's been proven. So they say that he had a pellet gun, okay, but then they also say that this guy got out of the vehicle, took cover behind the stolen truck, and pulled the pellet gun on officers and was pointing it at them. Like, that just makes no sense. Why would anybody, like, I can totally take these guys, you know, with my pellet gun. Like, what the fuck? This just makes no sense, and we can't prove anything that they're saying because there's no footage. No footage was made available. They use plainclothes officers, which is a new trend that's they're setting now. This year, there's been numerous officer-involved shootings where it's been plainclothes officers that they've used to track these suspects. And so they don't wear body cameras. So there's no body camera footage. So we just got to believe everything that they say. And yeah, they wouldn't lie to us.
Which, by the way, I mean, if they're undercover, that's one thing. But if if you have plainclothes cops and they're going out for the express purpose of arresting somebody, why can't they have body cams?
Yeah. I mean, the guy had a tactical vest on. They said in the press conference that one of them had a tactical vest to identify that they were in fact police. Because they're not in police cars. So this guy could just think he's getting jacked, right? But supposedly they identified themselves. He had a tactical vest. So put a fucking body camera on that tactical vest. Like, we need to see what's going on. Did this guy really pull the gun, or the pellet gun, or did they find it in the stolen truck after they had shot him? You know what I mean? And then there's no footage, so we can say whatever we want.
Or did they find it in their trunk?
Yeah, or did they? Yeah, exactly, man. I wouldn't put it past them, especially Metro. Bad apple. Every cop in this department has been convicted of domestic violence. One is a sex offender. That's the same department. The Free Thought Project wrote about it. Family. Woman killed in deputy-involved shooting. Suffered from mental illness. So the family says she had a pair of scissors on her. And they shot her. I forget where this was. Albuquerque. New Mexico in the headlines again.
Yeah, which is another place where they shoot. I don't know what the numbers are, but they shoot a ton of people. They shot that homeless guy who, committed that crime of sleeping out in the fucking mountains around the city.
Yep. Man installs cameras to catch cop harassing him. He caught them beating him instead. So you can see the video, read that article at the Free Thought Project.
Yeah.
3 teen workers arrested for allegedly spitting in food served to police officers. So they got caught because somebody snitched on them, one of their coworkers. Snitches get stitches. These guys are heroes. They don't deserve it.
Which I'm not in favor of spitting in people's food, because I don't want to set that precedent. And, if somebody doesn't like me, they're going to spit in my food, and I got to just fucking cook all my food at home so I don't ever have somebody taste test it for me or something. But,
yeah. Burger with cheese, it's for a cop. Like fucking Super Troopers.
But meanwhile, they're probably getting that food for free,
Look, man, yeah.
Which is against Metro policy, even though they get food constantly for free.
And these are fucking kids. Like, cut them a break, dude. They're charging all 3 of them with felonies. Potentially ruin the rest of their lives and won't be able to get hired, can't own a gun, can't vote, all that kind of shit, just because they spit in some cop's food. Like, get over it. Madison cop won't spend a day in prison for child porn. So you've got these kids looking at felony charges for spitting in food. Then you got this cop with child porn who just isn't going to spend a single day in jail.
Which that look on his face is the same one he had walking out of that courtroom.
Oh, yeah. Just unbelievable. Again, New Jersey. New Jersey's been making a lot of headlines lately. But that's it. That's 2 weeks worth of cop news.
If you doubt the system is set up to protect the system, that judge who was being arrested earlier, the reason she was arrested because her brother was working as a corrections officer and he beat up a teenager, and she went and dug up some dirt on the teenager for him, illegally accessed his files and forwarded those files to her brother. Mm-hmm. That's why she was charged with it, and that's why she was being arrested.
The judge
being sentenced. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so I'm gonna share those articles. Check it out. If you want to, read up more, get more details on any of these stories, help us out. Share this out in any police accountability groups you may be involved in, or you can send it on, Facebook Messenger really easily to any friends that might be interested in hearing about these stories, or just tag them in the comments section. Help us grow our audience. We're trying to get this news out to people, trying to change hearts and minds, try to break through the barriers that these police apologists have, and get them to see that things are getting worse. These, I mean, I don't know if it's. I think it's getting worse. Some say it's just that it's getting exposed more now because of, everybody has a camera, so you're able to film and it's able to get out there now. We're so connected that we hear about stories all over the place now.
I think it's more widespread and more economic based than it used to be. But at the same time, there is a lot. It's been going on for a long time.
Right.
It's especially within certain communities, and it's being seen more, so people are more aware of it. But.
Yeah, definitely. But I also think it is getting worse because cops see that they're getting away with it, so they keep doing it. And then people that want to engage in these type of behaviors and get away with it start applying to be cops. So it is becoming more prevalent, whether it's sexual offenders or just fucking psychopaths that want to kill somebody, or you no longer have to just join the military to go kill somebody. You can, stay in your neighborhood and be a cop. I do ask not only share this, but head over to patreon.com. It's patreon.com/ACAB radio. And if you like what we do, we could use some support for as little as $1 an episode. We'll record some extra content for you guys. If you support us for a while, we'll be able to afford to send you a shirt or
you give us $100, we'll come to your house and sit on your couch and talk to you.
Right. I'm gonna try to figure.
200 will not do that.
I'm also gonna try to figure out how to do call-ins, because we do have a Google Voice number and there's a way to do it, so people can start calling into the show and chop it up with us, not just comment in the comment section, because sometimes we don't have a chance to see the comments in time to address it live, but there weren't any this show. And if you're watching this on one of our other pages that we cross-post to, the comment section that we pay attention to is from the actual ACAB radio page where we go live. So if you're watching this on like Nevada Cop Block or some other page that we cross-posted it to, try to start watching it from ACAB Radio's Facebook page if you're going to make comments, so that we can see those comments and answer any questions you might have. Yeah.
If you are in fact selling a couch, I might need one soon, so let me know.
That was great. So thank you all for the support. We'll be back again next week with another week's worth of police news. We're trying to get Matt Agarist on the show. He had to reschedule, so hopefully we can bring him in next week. He's with the Free Thought Project, who, as you guys know, we cover a lot of their material, so he's the author behind most of the work there and the founder of the Free Thought Project. So stay tuned next week. Hopefully we'll have him on next week or the week after. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. Is there any events coming up you want to talk about, Kelly? My phone died. This Friday we'll be sharing food with the homeless.
I think we're short on events lately. We should. We're going to be doing Chalk the Police State. We're doing it on August 10th this year rather than we usually do it on July 18th, just because if you go back into the history of it, that was our original court date for the citations, and that's when we chalked the courthouse once they actually never filed the charges. So we showed up for our court date and chalked and then went home. And then August 10th was when we actually got arrested.
So you're going to do it on the arrest anniversary this year? Gotcha.
Well, usually a lot of times we do it that day also, but because of scheduling conflicts, we didn't do it July 18th. So we'll be doing it August 10th.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely be there. Anybody that wants to come is welcome. Any Proud Boys that'd like to show up.
Yeah, bring lots of water.
That was fun last year.
And if you want to participate, you can do it. You don't have to be in Vegas. You can do it wherever you're at. There's police state to be chalked everywhere.
Yeah, grab some chalk, head to the headquarters or wherever. Send us some pictures. We'll share it out. Also, the last Monday of this month, I don't have my calendar, I can't tell you the date, but the last Monday of this month, we're also doing a food share at CARE down on Four-Master, the CARE complex. So head over to the page Water and Solidarity or Food Not Bombs Las Vegas, and you'll find those events. There's also an ICE protest coming up, I believe, this Saturday. So I'll share that in the comment section too if you're interested. That's the only events I know of off the top of my head going on this month. So if I come across any more, I'll be sure to share it in the comments so you guys can check it out and attend if you're interested. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Have a good one.